Once again, welcome to the RawAutos podcast. I am Josh Lewis, the host of the podcast, the creator of RawAutos.com, the guy who basically does everything. I can't believe it. Episode 5. We are in this for the long haul. We haven't been canceled. We have no sponsors because I'm the sponsor. I'm the person putting it on, handling everything. I'm having a good time introducing people that I enjoy talking to, that I enjoy reading or listening to on a regular basis. And I hope you're enjoying it too, because this is fun. Even with all of the COVID-19 / coronavirus stuff going on, I'm happy that there's still conversations to be had. There's still entertaining people to listen to, and that's what RawAutos.com is for, and the RawAutos podcast. Of course, we are on Apple Podcasts now, and that is a big deal. I don't know why it's a big deal, but it's a big deal. You can always go to RawAutos.com. The podcast link is in the menu bar at the top. Man, this week I have someone really special that I think everybody knows and loves, Mr. Jonny Lieberman, the senior editor of MotorTrend magazine, guy you've seen all over YouTube.
Hi there.
Yeah, he's on the podcast. Now, in this podcast, we had a kind of a finite amount of time. We were recording between his son's nap. He has a 3-year-old son. And then you're listening to it now, Wednesday, April 9th. Wait, is it April 9th? No, it's April 8th. What am I thinking? The days, they don't even make sense anymore. I don't even know what the hell day it is. I don't know what month it is unless I look at my phone. That's about it. I'm sure everybody feels the same way. The days are just running on. And it's okay. I mean, it's not, it's not ideal. But how's everybody doing? Finances going okay? Dealing with stuff? You stir crazy yet? Hanging out in your home? Getting mad at your spouse, your kids, yourself. I feel like these things, in situations like this, more than anything, there is irrational annoyances and irrational just anger that happens. I speak from experience. I love my wife. I'm glad she's home. I enjoy the time that we have together. But sometimes she is stir crazy in the house. I am fine. I'm like, you know what? This is good. I'm happy being here. But she is not entirely happy being home, especially when we have 2 dogs and a cat. And I'm usually home while she is, I work from home 90+% of the time while she is out working a more typical 9 to 5. And since she's been home, she's like, oh my God, I don't know how you do it. 2 dogs and a cat driving you crazy all damn day. They're going nuts. They want to be outside all day long. And our cat is an interesting cat. All 3 of our pets are rescues. Our cat is funny because she likes to pee and poop outside at night. Now, during the day, she'll go in her litter box or whatever. But because we're home, now she's like, oh, this is great. I can go outside and pee and poop in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, whenever I want to. Whenever the dogs go outside for any reason, the cat is like, let's do this. Yeah. I mean, it's like you open the door and it's like just a stampede of animals. I mean, it's only 3 animals, but it's usually my wife running out the door too, because she's like, I got to get the hell out of the house. Smell some fresh air. And it is nice. It is nice getting outside. Luckily, we have a backyard. We live on a little less than a 1/4 of an acre, so not a huge plot of land, but we have a nice backyard with a 6-foot privacy fence. We have 2,175 square feet on 2 levels, so we're happy. My wife is currently downstairs right now watching, I think, Westworld while I'm recording this intro for the podcast. I have 1 dog at my feet. My cat was just walking around a minute ago, and my other dog is downstairs with my wife, keeping her company. I do want to get this along because I think this is a great interview. Jonny is a fun person to talk to and listen to. But the crazy thing is, this podcast, the actual interview, is under an hour. It's under 60 minutes. That's a shocker. So this whole podcast is going to be a little over an hour, which is quite crazy for me. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, please welcome to episode 5 of the Raw Autos podcast, Mr. Jonny Lieberman. How are you doing? How are you holding up with everything going on?
Well, the coronavirus lockdown is very weird. And I have a 3-year-old, which means that I think people without children might actually be enjoying themselves, assuming that they can pay rent. With a 3-year-old, there's no enjoyment whatsoever. They can't really go like 10 minutes without needing something. They have no attention span. And then you want to be a good parent, not just let them watch TV all day. So my new thing is that daycare workers should be paid $50,000 a week. Oh my God, how do they do this? But other than that, great. He's taking a nap right now. If he wakes up, I gotta go get him. But right now he's down for the count. So.
My absolute favorite was yesterday when I asked you if you were ready to go, and you said no, and then you said because your son wouldn't lay down for a nap, and then he puked on you. What, 10 minutes later?
He puked on my hand. Yeah, it's great. He was like gonna spit some food out, and he was like choking. Like if he doesn't like something, he'll kind of like pretend like he'll like swallow it a little bit, but then like start fake choking it, so he can like show me that it's hurting him. But then he actually just made himself puke. So then, yeah, he just puked all over my hand as I was going to get the food out of his mouth.
So what was it that he didn't like?
Oh, he liked it just fine. It was a chicken quesadilla, but it was one of those where like I'm like, eat another bite. Come on, eat one more bite. Come on. Because he had 3 pieces and he ate like maybe 1. I was just trying to make him eat like the whole thing because you want your kid to eat. And yeah, he just puked all over my hand. It was awesome.
And now that you're a father, I'm not a father yet, so I guess.
Oh, it's the greatest. You got to do it. Do it now.
Do it now immediately. Just stop it. You know what? I'm going to end the podcast now. I'm just going to go make one. Let's just
snap your fingers.
Well, my sister has 5, which is incredibly irresponsible. Let's be honest.
I think more than 2 is kind of questionable. But go ahead.
Right. So I've been an uncle since I was just before I turned 10.
Yeah, but so what, man? Being an uncle just means that
I'm cool
to like leave when you feel like it.
Yeah, that's what I've always liked. I have 2 dogs and a cat, so I'm like. I can keep my dogs and my cat, but then I have like my nieces and nephews over that I'm like, okay, you can get the hell out now. This is fine. I love you from afar.
Right.
But
no, kids just literally change everything. Not better or worse, just different. Everything changes.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
So now that you're a father and you are, I think the main thing is you're an automotive journalist who is a father at the same time, which if I'm thinking about it, becoming a father, I think about all the cars that my dad hadn't sold that came and went, because he had to be more of a family man. And it's like, why would you do that? When I was 8, 10, 12 years old, why would you do that? Why would you sell that? Now you as a father, has anything changed in terms of how you view cars?
No, nothing at all. No, we have 1 kid. So I reject the American notion, where you have 1 kid and like you suddenly need to be driving a army transport vehicle. Like we have a Audi wagon, Audi Allroad.
Right.
And my wife's like, she's like, it's too big. I hate it. It's hard to park. So we are thinking about getting a smaller car. Because we don't need that much, and this, look, maybe when he starts being in 900 sports and running carpools, but I think we'll just lead a different kind of life and we'll avoid all that and we'll stick to cool cars. So I still have my my little Ford Fiesta, Porsche 914 is getting worked on, and we're probably ditching the Audi for an Alfa Romeo, which is kind of lateral move in size, although the Alfa will drive much, much better. It won't be a wagon, sadly, but that's okay. And then SUVs are just they're just so big and pointless.
I agree, but I guess the problem is you and I have, you more than me, but we have the luxury of sorts to understand that SUVs are great in small doses when we're reviewing them, but I feel like after 5 days, you're like, what else can I do with this that I just don't.
Yeah,
I don't need this.
I'm 100% in favor of Wranglers and Land Cruisers and G-Wagons and something that can actually go off-road.
Right.
But minivans cut to look like trucks. Just what's the point? There is none. I will say I do have a soft spot. I have a what do I have? I have a Porsche Cayenne Turbo Coupe in the
Mm.
driveway, and I have a soft spot for like stupidly overpowered, physics-defying machines like that. I would don't know. I would I own one? Yeah, like if someone gave me an Urus, I'd be like, okay, I can rock a Lamborghini Urus. But yeah, for the most part, like I saw a Nissan Pathfinder on the freeway today, and it was just so sad to look at. It's just like, oh, like we had this guy Mike Febo that used to work for us, and I remember when it first came out. This would have been back in like 2013. He looked at it and he goes, Mall Finder, and he's right. It's the Mall Finder. And it's just like, oh, could you imagine driving a 17-foot long thing with a CVT? It's just like wah wah, just like it's so sad.
I feel like I feel like once you reach a certain age, your like sexuality kind of becomes a CVT. Like once you've been married long enough, and
Oh, I was just having that conversation. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I hope that's not true, but
I hope it's not true either. I mean, you and I both listen to Howard Stern every day, and Howard Stern talks about masturbating, 24/7.
sure.
So it's like,
I'm right there with him, but just there is something like to me, it's like it's one of those weird things. Like I know, like intellectually, for most families, there's nothing better than a minivan, and I'll have friends. I'm thinking of one woman in particular. She has 4 kids, and she's like, "Oh, I got to get rid of my Escalade. Like, what should I get?" I'm like, "Just get the minivan. You got 4 kids. You're not fooling anybody,
right?
Like,
right, exactly.
No one thinks you're cool. Like, you can have 1 kid and maybe kind of trick some people into being cool, but if you have 4 kids, you're not cool. You're just not. You're the opposite. But then at the same time,
you're taking up space, if anything.
Yeah, but then like at the same time, I try to like, I know the minivan's the right thing to do, but I would not that I'd ever take a bus, but like, I don't think I could ever buy a minivan. You know what I mean? Like I just feel like it's just one of those. And like I know CVTs like a good fuel economy, but like just driving anything with a CVT is like, I might have to like take a subway, which I would also never do. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
It's just like, oh, I just can't stand stuff like that. There's really nothing more miserable than driving a CVT. Let's be honest here.
I can't.
It's the worst.
That is absolutely a perfect point. So 2 things. Number 1, I just had a Land Cruiser Heritage Edition.
Oh, you had the Heritage Edition?
Yes.
I didn't know they had the press car of that. Wow, how is it?
It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, the Land Cruiser. No. Here's the thing. No one who how to put this. If you've never driven a Land Cruiser, you don't get it.
You have no idea.
A Land Cruiser, you want to spend $86,000
yes.
on a Toyota yesterday.
And this is $89,000, right shy of $90,000. And I'm telling you right now, I'm like, why would you buy an Escalade? No need. This is it right here. This is the perfect SUV. The brakes are great. Handling is amazing. It's just enough speed, and the size is perfect.
Yep. Look, the downside, besides the 90,000, is it probably gets 13 miles a gallon.
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah. But you can't say enough good things about the Land Cruiser. You just can't. I mean, I probably told this on a bunch of different podcasts. So excuse me if you've heard me on other podcasts and you've heard this story. But I had one. I guess it was like last summer, and I went to a friend's house, and they're fairly well off, and they have a Range Rover, right? 3 years old, and like everyth's just starting to fall
apart.
Right?
Yeah,
the glass is failing, right? So the wife says to me like, "Oh, what would you get?" And she actually does off-roading. She's a photographer, and she'll go off in nature and take photos and stuff like that. And I'm like, I brought it to her house. I'd get one of these, and she's like, looking at it, she's like, a Toyota, because I guess she thought it was a Sequoia or similar. Mm-hmm. I'm like, no, this is a Land Cruiser. Right, and she's like looking at it, and she's like, it is pretty nice inside, but not really getting it, right? When I tell her the price, because this was the $88,000 version. So if discounting the Heritage version, there's one option on a Land Cruiser. It's rear seat entertainment.
Yep.
So this one had it. So it went from 86 to 88,000. Anyways, fast forward the next day, and her neighbor he's a very wealthy guy, and he's got like a airplane hangar stuffed with cars. And he heard I was in town. He wanted to come talk to me. He knows who I am, blah, blah, blah. So anyways, he comes over driving a 2001 Toyota Land Cruiser. And she's like, oh, wait a second. This guy has like, you know, Porsches from the 1950s.
Right.
Why is he driving this? And I'm like, you know, hey, don't you see what I'm talking about? And I turned to his name was John, and I go, John, how many miles are on your Land Cruiser? He goes, I just cracked 200,000. And I go, and what's gone wrong with it? He looks at me, he's like, nothing. There's like, nothing has ever gone wrong with it. And then I said, would you ever sell it? He goes, why would I sell it? It's perfect. You know, so
the Land Cruiser is, without any doubt, it is the Toyota Camry of SUVs, except way cooler.
Yeah, I don't know about the. I wouldn't even say Camry. It's better than that. The Camry is like you just kind of you kind of buy that because like you
have nothing else in life. You just don't need anything else.
Yeah, it's just you know it's like you're buying a stove and you want a good stove, but you don't really care that much.
Right.
Like
right.
I would, if I was going to buy a stove, I'd be looking at like expensive Italian things because how often are you going to buy a stove? So
right.
Might as well make it good.
Right.
Which is why I'm going to buy an Alfa Romeo. Right.
Right. What the hell?
Yeah, you know, you only live once. But you know, Camry's just like I need to make a sensible decision. The Land Cruiser, it's not sensible because it's a lot of money, but it's wonderful. You know, it's to me it's exciting as like a Porsche 911. It's just like a very exciting vehicle that gets my juices flowing, and you know, I'm just really happy they exist. Sadly, according to my inside sources, they're actually going to can it in the U.S. They'll still make the Lexus version, but I think it looks like they're going to get rid of the Land Cruiser.
Oh, see, I thought they were canning the Lexus version and keeping the Toyota.
No. Again, according to my sources, and man, one day when my book comes out, let me tell you the shit storm this got me in when I broke this one. But Toyota was not happy about me saying this. But yeah, it looks like after 2021. They're going to sunset the Land Cruiser in the U.S. So they sell 4,000 Lexus LX 570s a year to 3,000 Land Cruisers. And the Lexus costs, I forget what, a couple $1,000s more. So
right.
They're basically the only physical difference between them is the Lexus has a pretty sophisticated hydraulic suspension system where the Toyota has fixed springs and dampers. Actually, it might have electric dampers. I can't remember. It has, you know, steel springs, whereas the Lexus has hydraulic springs. So there is a physical difference. The interiors are different too. But so you know, Lexus is in a lot of trouble right now, even though they're just not making any profits. So
right.
Yeah, they're selling a lot of NXs, but NXs they're just not profitable, and so they're not selling LSs, they're not selling GSs, they're not even selling the RXs because there are only 2 rows. There is that RXL, but no one knows it exists, and it's a horrible name.
I was going to say, RXL. I mean, it was terrible. I mean, it was a terrible name, and even the RX, I feel like they lost what the RX could have been, I guess, because I feel like it should have been a 3-row from the beginning. I mean, not from the beginning, but from the latest model should have been a 3-row just normally.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like you know, Mercedes, I think, has a little bit of this problem with the GLE and the GLC.
Oh my God!
Whereas they're real similar in size, and yes, you can get a 3-row in the GLE, but like no one's going to get that, and it's terrible.
Right.
But it's just they're in so many segments that they actually have a bit of a problem. Anyways, so Lexus, they're just not making a ton of money, so they're like, hey, if we could get these Land Cruiser buyers to buy the Lexus, we'll earn, you know, 5,000 more per unit times 3,000 or something like that. And so it looks like in the U.S. They're going to cancel Land Cruiser to help Lexus's bottom line, which is a shame.
It is a shame.
Yeah. No, that's what my sources said. Toyota, of course, no comment at all.
Right.
That said, I shouldn't talk about it, but like, let's just say, many people in Texas hate me. So.
I think your autobiography should be called "According to My Sources."
Well, I have very good sources. Some of them actually live in Japan, and are of Japanese descent and native Japanese speakers. And over the years, I've cultivated them as my sources. And they love Land Cruiser. They don't want to see Land Cruiser go away. It means a lot. And there's a lot of people at Toyota, Americans at Toyota USA, that also love Land Cruiser, and they don't want to see it go away. So they talk to me because I know I have a big mouth and a fairly big mouthpiece. So hopefully the decision gets reversed, and there is going to be a next-gen Land Cruiser.
Just not here.
In 2022, yeah, globally. And there'll be a next-gen Lexus LX as well. And, it'll 3-liter twin-turbo V6. I think it'll be the same engine that's in the LS right now. Maybe some hybrid, although in a Land Cruiser, you don't really need, it's just meant to, like, overland.
Right.
So, I don't know. Anyway, so that's what have heard. It's just a shame, though, because there are just absolutely wonderful anachronisms. Like, people think of Toyota, it's like, oh, the Prius, well, right. There's the Prius and there's the Land Cruiser, which is a 3-ton, 12 miles per gallon, naturally aspirated V8 with a solid axle. It was literally the exact opposite.
Which is brilliant. Which is quite brilliant. I mean, when you think that there's a car company out there that just gives anybody whatever they want. I mean, but it's weird because it's the opposite of BMW, where I feel like BMW give everybody what they want, and it's all just like some of it's good and some of it's crap. It's like, I kind of
well, everybody wants to be Toyota in a way because they want that volume,
right?
Their volume is just insane. Best-selling car of all time is a Corolla, right? So volume's great, but when you chase volume, you water stuff down. And it's nice that, and I think it's just part of it is a little bit of a Japanese culture, but that they can let niche things lie, because they haven't spent $1 marketing the Land Cruiser since, I don't know, the 1960s. When's the last time you saw a Land Cruiser ad or marketing campaign or TV commercial? It's just like a in the know, word of mouth, secret club, wink wink, nudge nudge kind of vehicle. Stealth wealth, which there's very few Americans that like stealth wealth, but they've allowed it to exist. But and I think Toyota would have no problem. But what's going on is, the Toyota in Japan, they're like, why are we not making cash with Lexus? The whole point of doing Lexus is to make cash.
Right.
If we're not making money, something has to change. So
what's weird, because I feel like Lexus actually do make some. I mean, the GSF, I have not driven it. I've only watched everybody else's reviews, read everybody else's reviews. Everybody seems to really like it. I like the GS as a whole. I think it's a good car.
Yeah.
The LS
GS is wonderful. The GSF is terrific, but totally sales proof. Like, I've seen one.
Right.
I live in LA, where I saw a Porsche 356 on the freeway today, and what was it? God, it was so obscure old pre-war British car. So I've seen one GSF.
Such a shame.
You know what I mean? So just literally a sales-proof vehicle, which is too bad because it's a brilliant engine,
right?
And it's a great chassis. It's a really, really just wonderfully sorted out performance car. But no one buys them.
No one knows. No one understands. And going back to the CVT real quick, So I had, of course, I'm sure you've driven the original Yaris from years ago, right?
I'm sorry, the original who? What?
The Toyota Yaris.
Oh, the Yaris, yes.
Yeah, which was terrible, right?
With the stick shift, it was decent. With the CVT, it was they were not good.
So I, as well, got in trouble. I wouldn't say trouble, but Toyota PR at the time were a little upset with me because
by the way, just real quick, this was not PR that was upset with me. This was much,
this is executive. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So PR were a little annoyed with me. Luckily, executives haven't been annoyed with me yet. But PR were a little annoyed with me because I reviewed, this was 2011 or 12, whatever. I reviewed a Mazda 2 and with the manual gearbox.
Fun car.
Yeah, great car. Awesome car, just for the fact that it was simple, Yep. Great manual.
Yep. Yeah, it was wrong for the U.S. market, but a great car.
Right, exactly. And so I said in my review, in the first paragraph, I said, basically like, sure, the Yaris has a little bit more space, gets a little bit better gas mileage, and is a little bit better overall as a car. However, it's so boring that its owners are one bad day away from a tall ledge. And so Toyota were a little unhappy with, like, why would you say that about our car? And I was like, well, because it's terrible. So fast forward to 9 years later, Toyota drop off a Mazda 2. Toyota drop off a Toyota Yaris. I did not mean to actually say that.
Yeah.
They dropped the new Yaris off, the little hatchback. And of course, we know it's a Mazda 2. It's a European Mazda 2, just imported here as a Toyota. Best decision Toyota have ever made for one of their cars, at least for the Yaris, in a really long time. Because it's really good, and it doesn't use a CVT. It just uses a simple 6-speed automatic like Mazda been using forever and a day. And it makes the car so much more lively.
Yeah, no, you can absolutely kill a car. You can suck all the fun out of it with the CVT.
Yes.
I just want one thing though. It's funny, like the PR. I guess they have to pretend to be mad, but I'll remember like many years ago there was a new Corolla that was coming to one of the MotorTrend Car of the Year programs, and it was being dropped off, and we asked the Toyota person who it was in PR at the time. We said, because it looked okay. It looked like it was new. This is many, many, many years ago. We said, "Oh, new Corolla, looks pretty good. How is it?" And he points and he goes, "That thing? Well, I don't know anyone on staff who would take that over a fucking bus pass." Trying to be nice to it. So,
holy hell.
They know what's up. They know what's up. They just don't want to see stuff like that in print.
Right. Yeah, and I do say that. I've said that to people all the time because people have asked me, I mean, you've been doing this a lot longer than I have, and obviously you've risen to an amazing level being with MotorTrend, but people.
Well, I don't know about that, but thank you very much.
You're welcome. So people ask me all the time though, like, are you friendly with people in the automotive industry? Like, do people get pissed off at you? Do people hate you for your reviews if you say something bad? And I always say, well, they know that I have a job to do, and I know that they have a job to do. Like, they've got to cheerlead no matter what, and I got to be real no matter what.
Right.
We all kind of come together, and it's like, well, again, like you said, they know the score. They just,
yeah.
They got to pay their own bills.
Look, and there's a few that don't, for sure.
Right.
I always tell this story. When I own a Fiesta ST, and I bought it. I think I bought it in 14 or 2014 or 15. It's a 15. I can't remember when I bought it. But I remember a guy at Ford called my coworker and said, "Did Johnny really buy a Ford?" And he's like, "Yeah." He's like, "But Johnny hates Ford. Why would he do that?" And it's like, I don't actually hate Ford. I thought that the last gen Explorer, which was garbage,
right,
so bad that they completely replaced it with a rear wheel drive version. I said it was bad, and so they get confused, like, and a lot of people get confused with this. I really don't care about brands. I don't sit at home at night and think like, oh, I love this brand so much. Mm-hmm. I'm a product guy, right? So while I was telling everyone you shouldn't buy a Ford Explorer, I went out and spent my own money on a Fiesta ST because I remember this very well. I was sitting there. It was it must have been November I bought it, so probably November 14, and we had to write like, what are the best cars you drove this year? So I was like, all right, well, so I drove a Pagani Huayra, that was good. Okay, that was number one. I drove the AMG 6x6, that was cool. And then the next best car, the Fiesta ST. And I'm like, why don't I own that? Like, I can afford that because they were a steal. So I went out and bought it. I don't care about Ford. And
right. I
get accused. Everyone's like, oh, you love AMG. It's like, well, I like certain AMGs. They happen to be actually really good. I don't really care about AMG as a brand. Like, yes, I have some friends that work there and things like that. But if they make a bad car, I will say so.
Yeah.
I'm brand agnostic. So like with Porsche, I have a friend and she has, I don't know, 3 or 4 different Porsches. One of them is a Macan. And I give her shit constantly. Like, oh my God, you bought the most overpriced Audi in the world. Or Mike Harley. I don't know if you know Mike Harley, but yeah. So Harley's got like a couple 911. Well, he's got a 911 and a Boxer Spider. Right. But then he bought a Macan. And I just make fun of him because
you got that for his wife, right?
I don't know. I just know he got one. But like, it's like 911, great. Boxer Spider, awesome. Macan, kind of pathetic. So I just don't care about brands. And it's I think for a lot of people it's hard to wrap their head around that. And we are in this unique position where I get to drive everything from a given brand, whereas most people, if you buy, like, just make this really easy, a BMW 3 Series, you don't really drive other BMWs, but you really like your 3 Series, hence you really like BMW. Whereas I drive the 3 Series, yeah, it's okay. Then I drive the 3 Series, what's that thing? The GT,
the Grand Touring,
yeah, and it's like Gran Turismo.
Oh, Gran Turismo, that's what. Yeah, there you go.
And it's like, oh my, actually that one's not even so bad. It's the 6 Series Gran Turismo is garbage, and it's just like, and we can also talk about how the 3 Series isn't all that. But my point is, brands don't matter, products matter.
What bugs me about, because I grew up really loving certain BMWs. I love you. Of course, we love the M3, the M5. And we all love
M5. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the E30. Like, so I graduated I was born in '86. I graduated high school in '04, and so I'm kind of a young pup. But
not that young. Go ahead.
Yeah, because you're what, 6 years older than I am, if that.
I'm 44.
You're 44. Okay, so you're 10
I'm
years.
11
older.
years
Okay.
older.
Oh yeah. Well, you're.
I just look young for an old fat guy with a beard. Go ahead.
But as I've grown up and as I've grown older, I always loved BMWs because I thought, I love the M3, I love the M5, I love BMWs, right? And then as you drive more brands, as you get older and drive more brands, you go, like you, I'm becoming more brand agnostic because it's like, there's certain cars that I like better specifically for the job that it does. And I feel like BMW as a whole have forgotten that they used to make half a dozen cars that filled the same, like just did that perfectly. You know what I mean? Or damn near perfectly.
They were chasing volume. Look, I always go back to like Chevrolet, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't care about Chevrolet. However, the Camaro is, especially like the 1LE models, they're as good a sports car as anything on the road.
Yeah.
They're absolutely incredible. The mid-engine Corvette is incredible. The Bolt didn't sell well. It's kind of dorky looking, but oh my god, it had 240 miles of range.
Right.
Well before the Model 3, and actually
at $35,000.
Yeah, it was a great price point. It was incredible. The new truck, the Silverado, worst in its class.
Right.
So while Chevy is capable of great things, they're capable of very bad things. And so it's and I'll get I get a lot of stuff when I'm like, oh, you should drive an SS 1LE like I have on a track with like an Huracan. You'd be shocked at how good it is. Right. And people are like, oh, how much does Chevy pay you? And it's like, well, they don't pay me anything. In fact, they're mad at me because I said the Silverado, which by the way is infinitely more important to Chevy. The Silverado is infinitely more important than a Camaro. They could lose the Camaro tomorrow and Chevy will still exist. If they stop making Silverados, there's no more Chevy. They wish they could pay me to say nice things about the Silverado. You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it's a weird sticking point for a lot of people.
And that brings me to a really good question.
Oh, I hope so.
What is going?
I'm tired of all these bad questions.
Tired of all this shit we're talking.
Yeah.
What's going to happen because of this crisis with the automotive industry? And every car company is stopping selling cars, trying to sell an $80,000 truck to every person, including a broke person on welfare.
Yeah, I don't know. It's sorry about that. It's bad. It's going to be very, very bad. Now I remember I'm old enough to have been a professional during the Great Recession, and it was very, very bleak for a couple of years, and then full rebound. And I remember, I think it got as bad as in 2008. I might be a little off the numbers, but the new cars in the U.S. dropped to like 13 million a year. Yeah. And, to be healthy, we want to be selling about 17 million a year. It took a while, but we got back to it. I think we got back to the peak before. So hopefully, there's a recovery plan in place. Hopefully what we're going through right now doesn't last too long and not too many people suffer, but I don't know. I'm not good at prognostication, about car sales. I'm just not.
Does it worry you though?
Yeah, of course. Oh God, yeah.
I mean, does it make you think that? Because I had Alana Shear on the other day, and we talked about, and of course Alana, we talked about the fact that that they're going to have to do something because you can't expect people to just run right out and buy a new car. And I talked to her about, I sold cars in 2007. I saw the writing.
Scumbag. I mean, how nice. Yeah.
I saw the light and was like, I got to get the hell out of this.
Yeah.
So actually, this is true. I used to get in trouble when I sold cars because I told people too much information about how the process worked.
Yeah, never do that.
Yeah, so I always got in trouble because I'd say, well, here's what we do. We shop you with banks and we try and get you the best deal. The problem is that when you get into finance, they're going to try and stick you with a bunch of crap. And here's how to go against. I used to get in so much trouble for that.
Yeah, because you're that's the dealer's business model is like, okay, we'll. I mean, look, this is old news, but they don't care about price. They just want you to pay way too much interest a month, get a bad loan, and screw you on your trade-in, and then make you pay for dumb things like undercoating and low jacking.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like when we bought my wife and I just bought, or she bought, sorry, at the end of December, a 2019 Jetta GLI with a manual. And they were trying to sell us a $400 package if we need to replace keys. And I was like,
I'm gonna say something. We lost the key. That's actually $400 is not a bad deal.
It's not a bad deal, but I was like,
a modern key. Oh my God, they're horribly expensive.
They're pointlessly expensive.
No, trust me. No, look, I sit there. I'll sit there when I'm buying a car, and I'll sit there with the people, and I'm like, I want to be like, I've actually written the article a couple times for different outlets over my career where I explain, the bend you over tactics you're trying to deploy against me right now, and I'll never fall for them in a million years. I just sit there and politely say no. But anyways, no, I am worried. Yeah, of course. I mean, this is my livelihood is dependent upon people buying new cars. I like you said, I've kind of, risen within this industry, and I'm, fairly well known at MotorTrend, which is a major outlet. But I remember in 2008 having no work. I remember in April 2008 coming up, I think I was $300 or $400 short of rent.
Ooh.
Didn't have it. Just didn't have any work. Was a couple $100 short of rent. So yeah, it's gonna be really bad for a lot of people. And like I said, I mean, we just hope that we can recover, because the alternative sucks. So
yeah,
I'm kind of a natural optimist in some ways. But, look, as far as the car makers go, I mean, how could they have seen this coming? Because the exact same thing happened to them 12 years ago when they were like, man, these SUVs they're printing cash, man. It's going to last forever.
Oh, God, I know.
Well, true it again. But the good news that hopefully is, look, like I think light trucks and SUVs, crossovers, whatever you want to call them, they make up, I think, 71% of all new car sales. So maybe a good thing that comes out of coronavirus is people stop buying gigantic battle and kind of get back to having sedans and stuff like that.
Well, I hope so. I mean, but the other big problem is that I hope that car companies, especially the American car companies, start making sedans again. However, I hope they don't make a Malibu, a Taurus, a 200. Like, oh hell! If it's
they can make them good. I mean, name's a name. All you gotta do is make them good.
No, but that's the problem.
Yeah.
How hard did they actually work to make them good? Like the Impala is the greatest rental car in the world right now. But it's
nice. Hey, I like.
It's a nice car.
It's a nice car. I could think of a lot of cars I would buy after I bought the Impala. It's a good car. But again, like they don't market it. They don't do anything with it. So yeah, I don't look. That's a whole other can of worms. But look, they're capable of making great cars.
Of course,
it's just a matter. It's a matter of it's what Audi did. You have to make great cars across your entire product portfolio for about a decade, and then it takes about a decade for people to notice. So it's a 20-year plan, and a lot of times, a lot of these car companies are like, we got to turn it around in 1 year,
right?
But it happens. I mean, Lincoln finally turned the corner. Now the problem is, how did Lincoln do it? They made great looking SUVs.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. So maybe look, also the electrification of the car, maybe this will speed it up. And maybe electric cars will just have to look a little bit different, So I don't know. Although, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I would not be opposed to General Motors just making a ton of new Bolt and Volt type products.
Well, that's their plan. I mean, I believe they just showed like 11 out of 24 of the electric cars they're going to bring online within the next 5 years. So yeah, they're planning almost full electrification of their fleet. And I know some of the people working on that, and they're all way off the record, but they're just saying like the amount of performance that they're getting out of what they're building is like staggering to them. And these are people that were involved with like, the Cadillac V's and the Camaros and the Corvettes and stuff like that. So I'm real hopeful it's going to be good stuff.
That's another bummer is Cadillac.
Well, yes and no. I mean,
great cars.
Yeah. Well, their problem is they're not making great SUVs.
They're making horrible SUVs. And the new Escalade looks like hell, except for the inside. Finally, the inside looks great. The outside looks the worst.
That's debatable. I don't mind how the outside looks, but the Escalade's its own thing. It's always been its own brand. Right. It's an outlier.
It's the Corvette of Cadillac.
Yeah, exactly. But I will say, I just drove that new CT5V.
Yeah.
And with the exception of the terrible name, like, wow, what a cool car. So like, here's another case where they're building, especially what does that car compete with, right? So that competes with the C43 AMG, and it competes with the 340i M Sport, and it competes with the S4. Well, compared to all those three, I would totally take the Cadillac, like, without even thinking about the other ones.
And the Cadillac comes with a manual, doesn't it?
Not yet, but they were kind of like wink, wink. Basically, This is the 2020 model year, and it's going to be a super short model year because now, I shouldn't say
especially now.
Because, well, coronavirus has interrupted everything. But long story short, because of supplier reasons, they didn't get Super Cruise, which is the best technology in the world. They didn't get it into the 2020s. So the 2021s are coming soon, and they're going to have Super Cruise. And they were sort of winking that there would be a manual. But even without the manual, it's that 10-speed transmission. It's super good. Same one basically is in like the you can get them in Camaros now, and it's a good transmission. So
now
they've done a really wonderful job on that car. It's hard to stress how great a driving car that thing is, but it's really good.
So now I guess we'll go back into the beginning of your career. Because I feel like
you want to jump there?
Well, I feel like now, I mean, we've
a dark place. All right, go ahead.
I mean, even though everybody knows who you are, like my dad, I was talking to my dad earlier. I saw my mom and my dad basically from very far away.
I just visited my mother from 10 feet away wearing a full respirator and gloves.
Yeah, how did that feel?
Bad. Anyways, go ahead.
So I was talking to my parents and they didn't realize that I had started, this podcast. And so they were like, what, they saw me and my wife, what are you guys doing? How's everything going? Blah, blah, blah. And I said, because my parents were just so excited to see outside people. They're both, dad's 69, mom's 65,
Yeah.
And I said, well, I started this podcast for, RawAutos, and I've just got a bunch of people on there, got a bunch more people coming, and I'm talking to Jonny Lieberman later, and Dad goes, oh, the MotorTrend guy. I was like, yeah, the MotorTrend guy. And so he was like really excited because he's like, I want to listen to that one, so people know who you are, obviously, and now, especially because this podcast, more people will know who you are.
Right. Well said.
Yeah. But your beginning is very interesting because I don't know how much you really realize this, but it was you and Matt Farah were the two reasons that I actually wanted to write about cars.
I did not know that. That's I'm honored. That's cool.
So
Matt's a really good buddy of mine, so I love hearing that even more. That's great.
You were the two guys that I of course I watched him and I read you.
Yeah. Okay.
And you're the reasons I created my own website and started talking about cars.
Wonderful.
That's exactly how it happened.
Okay.
And I remember I met you. So the first time I met Matt was at LA Auto Show years ago. I met you at the LA Auto Show as well.
Yeah.
And I felt really stupid because I was so excited to see you and meet you. I shook your hand. You shook my hand. You were very nice. You were very, very generous.
Phew.
No, you're very generous.
There's one guy who was a real asshole too, apparently. And
and he's never lived it down.
I'll tell you that story in a second, but go ahead.
So I walked up to you and you were sitting in the press room. You're typing.
Okay. Yeah.
I can't remember who you were sitting next to, but you were typing and you looked up and you were being, you were trying to be cordial and, like, oh, hello, nice to see you, nice to meet you, blah, 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 blah. And I started to try and start a conversation, go a little bit deeper. And you said, hey, I'm sorry, I'm live blogging right now. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I have felt like such an ass ever since. I don't know why.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. I just felt incredibly stupid for being,
live blogging. That must have been like when I was at Autoblog or something.
Maybe. Because
a long time ago.
I also met Ray Wirt at...
Oh, God. Change the subject. Let me tell you my story. It's way better than whatever you're going to say. So many years ago, I remember I was running through an airport, And in my entire life, and I've been, I'm a million miler on Delta. I'm usually like the top status of Delta or whatever airline every year, right? Right. My entire life, I've missed one flight, right? So I just hate missing flights. So when I'm running through an airport, that means I might miss a flight, right? And some guy was like, "Hey, Johnny, blah blah blah," and I apparently was on the phone and kind of barely waved at him. Didn't think anything of it. Anyways, I have a Google alert set up every time my name is mentioned. I get a thing, right?
Right. Yeah.
So on Reddit, it's Jonny Lieberman's an asshole, and it's this guy, and it's
man.
I tried to say hi to him, he totally blew me off. Oh man, he thinks he's too cool, blah blah. So now I go wait a minute, if anyone ever. By the way, this is a horrible thing I'm doing because I go out of my way, how you doing? What's your name? What's your selfie? Because I just don't want people to think I'm an asshole if I'm running to an airplane or something like that.
See,
I might even have the story wrong. I can't remember if it was an airport, but in my mind, there was a good reason I wasn't talking to the guy.
I only I think the greatest thing is obviously nobody recognized me. Nobody knows who the hell I am, and which is fine. I couldn't give a shit less. But I have met people through friends who, when introduced to me, they hear or they know that I review cars. So they start asking me, "Do you know so and so? Do you know who so and so is? Blah blah blah."
Yeah.
And I remember one time I was hanging out with my buddy in Wilmington, North Carolina, at the beach, and he introduced me to a friend of his who had at the time an Aston Martin V12 Vantage S. And he goes, "Do you know who Matt Farah is?" And I said, "Yeah. In fact, I actually talk to Matt every once in a while. We text from time to time." And he goes, "No way." And so I was like, "Yeah." So I open up my phone and I text Matt. And I'm like, "Hey, there's a guy here that I'm with at this party." And, he says, he thinks I'm way cooler because I know you. And he just sends back, "I'm glad you're famous through association."
Right.
And so
actually, that reminds me of a funny one. One time I was going to Matt's house. I was leaving our office, but I called an Uber. And I remember when I'm getting the Uber, the guy it was a BMW 5 Series, but he had a Nürburgring sticker on the back window. I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." I get in there and the guy's like, "Oh my God, I know you, blah, 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 blah." We're talking. And he goes, "Do you know Matt Farah?" And I'm like, "Yeah, you're actually driving me to Matt's house right now." And the guy, and anyways, I texted Matt. I'm like, "You got to come out and meet this guy. He's really cool." But yeah, it's pretty funny.
I love that stuff.
Famous by association is great.
It's funny because everybody always tells you don't meet your heroes, but I've met almost every one of my heroes, so to speak, in the auto world, and they've all been great. I followed Mike Spinelli around the first time I went to an auto show. I followed him around like a puppy, asking him everything about Jalopnik and how did you do it, all this stuff. And he was
how did he do it?
I don't know. I don't even think he gave me a good answer, if I recall correctly.
He doesn't know. No,
he has no idea.
Jalopnik was one of those just crazy things where it was just
lightning in a bottle.
Weirdly, it just all accidentally came together at the right time, and then it was all destroyed. But it was, there was about 2 years where it was really. We always said, I can't remember who first said this, but the Velvet Underground always said no one listened to us, but the people who did, they all started their own bands. And we always say, no one read Jalopnik, but everyone who did is now a professional automotive journalist.
That's exactly how it was for me.
Yeah.
And
no, I know. It was,
between you and Davey G, I also feel like an idiot as well, because you told me years ago, you said Davey G, and I don't know why I didn't associate it with Jalopnik, and I was just like, who? And you were like, "Stop talking to me right now and go read his stuff." And I was so I was like, "Oh, okay." So I went and I looked. I was like, "Wait a second, Nice Price or Crack Pipe?" Are you kidding? I've been reading this guy's stuff forever and a day, and I felt so embarrassed after that. I was like, "Oh God, Johnny thinks I'm an idiot."
No, I didn't think that. No, I just Davey was very, lightning in a bottle. He was
brilliant.
Yeah, he really was. By the way, Nice Price or Crack Pipe was originally a Merle Martin thing, and then this guy Rob, I can see his face. I'm blanking on his last name. Rob took it over and has been writing it for the last decade. But that was never a Davey thing.
I thought Davey actually did one or two. I thought I remembered him doing one or two.
He might have done one or two, but I'm pretty sure that was a Merle. I'm positive that was a Merle thing.
Now, I know it was a Merle thing, but when I was reading...
I remember the conversation about why that was picked up. But anyways, that's inside baseball.
No, but see, I like inside baseball. So what... I mean, you...
Do inside baseball.
You started where?
Well, okay. Technically speaking, I started at The Truth About Cars.
Right. Okay.
In 2005, and I know it was 2005 because the whole reason I got into cars was, and I shouldn't say got into cars, I tried to make a living at it, was I was at my old job, and I remember I turned 30, and I was so bored I couldn't even think of a way to goof off at work. I was just sitting there, and I'm like, if you don't change your life, you're going to be 40 and going through the same thing in the same horrible office in the same chair at the same desk, even more bored, and you're bored to tears at the moment. So I used to read pretty much just Jalopnik and Truth About Cars exclusively back then. And I sent Robert Farrago was running Truth About Cars at the time, and it was just him. Maybe he had one other writer, this guy Frank. I can't remember though the timeline. And I said, hey, I want to do this, and he was like, all right, well, get a car and review it. So my buddy had just bought like a Subaru. So I reviewed that, and he was like, okay. I mean, I'm leaving out a lot, but he was like, okay, pretty good. Fine. Here's your first press car, and I forget what it was, but I started getting press cars and writing reviews, and I've always written, and I always knew I was a pretty decent writer. But then my third story I ever wrote got picked up by Jalopnik, because it used to be this mutual fecundation where we'd run stuff they did, blah blah blah. And Davey, it turned out I had met Davey years before at a strip club in LA called Jumbo's Clown Room. Long story. And then I'm like, dude, like Jalopnik, that's cool. Like, are you guys hiring? And he's like, yeah, here, talk to Spin. And I pitched Spin an idea, and I started writing for both of them, and just had a lot of success early on. And both sites kind of went down the tubes for a while, I would say.
Yeah.
But in 2005, 2006, they were pretty good. So yeah, that's how I started. And then I just kind of wrote for everybody and just did a lot. And then it's almost 10 years ago. Angus McKenzie just, I'm fast forwarding a lot of things, but he's like, hey, do you want to be our senior editor? And I was like, yeah, sure, sounds good.
Now you actually started, because I remember you being with Autoblog, and you actually started your first piece with MotorTrend at MotorTrend Classic, right? Yeah,
and so that's a funny story. So a buddy of mine has a car called a Tatra T87, 1941 Tatra T87, and I was like, hey, Autoblog, I'd like to write a story about this amazing car. And for people who don't know what it is, it's a Czech car. Rear engine, 4-door, 4-speed, hemispherical combustion chambers, air cooled V8, absolutely just killer gangster weirdo Czech car. And Autoblog and people running it at the time were like, no, nobody cares about that. Why don't you go write about the BMW 5 Series Grand Coupe or whatever? And I was like, bastards. And I was pretty unhappy at Autoblog, to be honest, even though just the way it was being run, and they just wouldn't really let me do the things I wanted to do. I saw that Angus had relaunched MotorTrend Classic, and I knew Angus, and I emailed him and said, hey, my friend has this car, and he's like, absolutely, man, that's one of the coolest cars ever. And I remember I wrote the piece, and he was like, hey, you did a very professional job. Would you like to have lunch? And it turned out they were looking for people. The whole story is they were looking for people, but they wanted to give me like an associate editor job. And it just would have been a huge cut in pay. And it wasn't really what I was looking for. I wanted to be a little bit more senior than that. So I said, listen, no, I'm not. I'm interested in MotorTrend. I'm not interested in that job. And he's like, well, if, how about in a few months can I get back to you? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I'm getting married in a few months. So, and then after I got married, he called me, and he just called me in his office, said, let's have lunch. And then he's like, right, yes or no, right now, senior editor. And I was like, well, that sounds pretty good. So yes.
So
I think I actually said to him, I should call my wife, but I'll say yes and call her later.
So this is how slightly I am obsessed with your career. So I apologize.
No.
I apologize. And I also promise you, I will not shoot you, because I'm not that kind of crazed fan.
Right. Yeah.
I remember your wedding car was a Porsche, Panamera. Jesus, Panamera.
Yeah. 4S.
God, why am
Yachting Blue. Yeah.
It was Yachting Blue, yes. And then also your last article at Autoblog was all the cars you didn't review, and it was like 8 cars, and it was just like a quick review of all of them.
Yeah. I hate that about myself. Look, here's my thing is after a certain amount of time has passed, and my biggest enemy in life is my own laziness. I'm definitely my own worst enemy.
Yeah.
If there's a chance for me to like stay up late and write a review or watch a Bosch episode for the 5th time now, I'll choose Bosch every time. I'm just inherently very, very lazy. So they become what I call dead soldiers. It just means there's no help in the story. And there was just a lot, and the ones at MotorTrend are even worse. I mean, I feel awful about some of the things that I've been like, yeah, I'll get to that, and just, and it's horrible, man. I mean, that's the one thing that I think was good for me with video was like you had to show up.
Right.
With writing, it's like, yeah, something came up, but with video, it was, you had to show up. And the other thing with a magazine, obviously, magazine deadline is a real deadline, because otherwise you have a hole in a book. Whereas like online is like, something came up. Yeah, no, I'm definitely my own worst enemy. Like yeah.
And that's where I get stuck with myself, because of course I have my own website, and I take the photos, I write the reviews, I make the videos, I edit.
You already lost me.
I'm like, yeah, exactly. Like, I'm like, oh, yeah. And I do this to myself all the time, because I'm like, oh, I got to get this video done. Oh, but I don't feel like it. And so I'm my own worst enemy with laziness also. And
yeah,
but probably my favorite thing you've done in your career, and this is again a Davy G. Johnson thing, is point counterpoint.
Oh, he said. He said.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. That actually, I will take credit for starting that, but it was actually me and Mike Austin. I don't know if you remember Mike Austin.
Jeez, of course,
Austin. Yeah. So we were, God, this is going way back. We were on the Ford Edge launch in San Francisco. And I remember I met Dan Neal. That's talk about meeting your heroes.
Right.
I met Dan Neal, and I was like, oh my God. It was so Mike Austin and I, I guess Mike won't care too much. Anyways, he went a little hard the night before, right? And he basically the next morning, he was my driving partner, and I remember he's wearing sunglasses at like 8 a.m, and it was like foggy and cold in San Francisco. And he's like, would you mind if I didn't drive and just took a nap? And so I drove the whole time, and he was like, he had to write something for Jalopnik. I was there for Truth About Cars. So I'm like, well, what if we just did this he said thing? We'll just like on Instant Messenger, we'll go back and forth and just publish that. But then Davey and I did it with the RS4. And that was a good one. It was a little long. I've read it a few times since, but it was the gonzo freak spirit of that was a refreshing take on a car review, I thought.
I always loved it. I've always been trying to recreate it somehow, but I can't, because I'm the only person that writes for me. And then also, I feel like it would just be too much stealing. It's like it was too brilliant at the time.
Here's the thing: we were 100% stealing, but we were stealing from Hunter Thompson. Right. You know what I mean? We weren't stealing from any other car people. I remember we used to refer to ourselves as with Bumbeck and Spinelli as doctors of automotive journalism, and then Dan Neal would call us the Swedish Mafia, because I don't know if you remember, but like when that Ferrari Enzo crashed in Malibu,
yes,
with Dietrich running off in the hills, and that crazy Swedish gangster guy, turned out he stole 2 Enzos. Like, it was a perfect storm in that, like,
it was so weird.
Well, but it was also it was like you couldn't create a better story for Davey and I to like freak out and obsess over for a month. And so, I mean, the guy was a member of the Swedish Mafia.
Yes.
So Dan Neal he'd just call us the Swedish Mafia, which we loved. So basically, I mean, I would say we were trying to rip off Hunter Thompson and impress Dan Neal. That was kind of what we were up to back then.
I don't even think I could tell the story of the first time I met Dan. I don't know that I would have permission to say what he said. So,
well, I can tell you mine. Mine was pretty funny. I remember I read his stuff, but I didn't know what he looked like. Because back then, you just didn't know what people looked like. It was before Facebook, if you can imagine that. I remember we're standing there, not on the Embarcadero, but some big public space in San Francisco. And we're looking at the Ford Edge, and I remember I I open the passenger door and I jump in, and there's this, well put together gentleman sitting in the driver's seat, and I kind of looked at his name badge. I'm like, oh my God, you're Dan Neal. And he looks at me, and I realized now he looks at my name badge and I had no idea who I was. You're Jonny Lieberman. And he was like, oh. And then
That's great.
I remember like me, him, and Mike Austin were driving around San Francisco, and Dan was going on and on about how much he liked the Saab 9.3, and we were telling him he was crazy. And then I think Saab went bankrupt a year later. That's how I met Dan. And I got to call him actually. We're still pretty good buddies.
He lives 20 minutes from my house.
I was going to say he lives outside of Raleigh, right?
Yeah, he lives. In fact, I actually the weird part is I know where he lives, which is awkward. Not because I've followed him there, I think.
Oh wait, you're on a podcast. Yeah,
nobody's listening anyway. Right. I only know that because every time they drop off a car to me that comes from Dan's house, they just basically call me when they're leaving his house because they'll get to me so quickly.
Oh, right. Sure.
So that's the only reason why I really understand where he lives.
Right. I got you.
But yeah, he actually, I told him and Ezra Dyer when they both moved to North Carolina, I told them both I really appreciated that they moved to North Carolina because I got their sloppy seconds and I was very happy with that.
Well, on that note, hey, it's been an hour. I got to jet because I think the kid just woke up. But,
yeah, go ahead, man.
But Josh, this was fun, man. This is great. Down memory lane and whatnot.
Yeah, thanks so much for doing it. I really appreciate it.
Hey, anytime. And yeah, let's do it again.
All right, man. Sounds good. I'll talk to you later.
All right, Josh.
All right, bye.
Bye.
All right, so what do you think? You think he said his son was done napping, or was he just ready to stop having me fangirl all over the phone? Or correcting me on what Davy G. Johnson actually did and did not write. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, Johnny is, of course, a great person to listen to. Very entertaining. What else can you say? We'll have him back on at some point because he is a charming guest, somebody who's always interesting, always got something wild to say. And that's great. It's great for radio. But that's what makes him good at what he does. This Friday, Mr. Jamie Kittman will be on the RawAutos podcast. That'll go live Friday morning. Share it with your family. Share it with your friends, loved ones, people you hate. If you really don't like somebody and you really want to get on their nerves, send them a podcast that's 2 hours long. Go ahead. But if you really like somebody, send them a podcast that's 2 hours long. Let them listen. Hope they enjoy. Again, subscribe on youtube.com/RawAutos. Like us on Facebook. Well, like me on Facebook. Like me on Twitter. Like me on Instagram if you want to. You don't have to. It doesn't really matter. As long as you're listening and having a good time and taking care of yourself. Remember, taking care of yourself means you're taking care of the people you love. Because if you were alive and well, hopefully, so will they. All right. I'll talk to you guys Friday. Happy motoring.
I've got